Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order, and I believe we have Jonathan here this morning.
Thank you guys for the time. Sounds like you guys are having a good morning.
Oh, boy.
I don't want to follow that guy, but it is what it is. So how are you? Jonathan Harrell.
Nice to meet you,
Jonathan
sir.
Harrell. Clerk. Jonathan.
Just me. Hey, you all right?
Absolutely. Always, yeah. So if you guys, is anybody new? Everybody familiar with what we do at Western Kansas Child Advocacy Center?
I'm not real familiar.
Okay, perfect. I need something actually from you, so I'm glad you're here. I went to your office and they said you was already here, so.
Very
It's
good.
our interagency agreement. It's every 3 years we gotta update it.
Right.
So at Western Kansas Child Advocacy Center, we help heal the trauma of abuse through prevention, support, and services. And we specialize in what is known as a forensic interviewing and then also therapy. And you can have this too, Tony, if you want. So we specialize in forensic interviews and also in therapy. And so basically what happens is whenever DCF gets involved in a case of possibly child abuse or law enforcement, they give us a call and they either come to our centers, we got 5 centers, they'll come to our center, or we've got mobile units that comes out to these rural or frontier communities or anywhere that they cannot bring the child to our center. We'll take the mobile units out, and the mobile units have been revamped to be like a center. And so we've got 6 mobile units now. We've got a few therapy units, we've got a few forensic interview units, mobile units, and then just recently, something new for everyone, a couple months ago, we ended up putting on the road our first, or a medical unit. So now we're doing medical exams. So we've got 2 registered nurses on our team that goes with our advocates, and they go and they give medical exams, wellness exams, but also, more importantly, what we call the SANE exams. You've got a crucial time after if there has been some maybe sexual abuse. You got a time frame there to where there's evidence, and some reason why certain hospitals don't do that type of exam, we can. And so, a lot of places, I don't know which counties don't do them if they have a local hospital, but I do know one, like around here, they oftentimes will send them to Hayes for some reason. So I don't understand, I don't know that part of that side, but for some reasons, even if you have a hospital, sometimes they still can't do those same exams, we can.
How soon after, say, abuse occurs are you on scene, or?
We can be within hours. So we don't get involved at all unless DCF or law enforcement gives us a call. But as soon as they give us a call, we can be there, basically, or they can come into our center. Depending on, we usually try to set up actually a time for them to come in. That way we can kind of walk their non-offending parent through the process, and so that they can actually prep their child to explain to them what we do, so that it'll be less traumatic for them. And so we're not court appointed. So some agencies, they're court appointed, so they get involved. If the case goes to court, they get involved, and then they provide therapy. And then once the court's over, they're done. We're not. So we're not court appointed. And so as soon as we get the call, and that's why we have the interagency agreements and all those things, to where we establish a good working relationship with one another in our communities. They typically gives us a call, and so we'll be on scene there, or they'll come to us, and then we've got advocates there that kind of walks the child through process of life. Honestly, not just this process, but of life. They're good mentors. We specialize in those forensic interviews. Unfortunately, over 80% of our cases are sexual abuse. We help heal the trauma of all abuse, but 80% of them is sexual abuse. About 98%, if I'm not mistaken, of the offender is actually someone the child knows, and then I think between 50 to 60% will be a family member. And so I tell people often, I'm from Kentucky and moved out here to be a pastor, and then resigned to come up here to work for WKCAC. But growing up, I was always taught stranger danger. Well, in reality, that's in our line of work where we're at. It's been our experience. That's rare. It's actually been more people they know.
Extended family.
Yeah, they woo them in, they build a relationship, they build confidence before they leap on them, unfortunately.
And then how does that work if, say, like you say, the parents prep the child before they go to
Yeah.
talk to you?
Yeah, so we want them to kind of let them know the process, so we will never see the offender, the perp, we will never see them through our doors, only the non-offender. And so whenever, say, if your child disclosed that, hey, uncle or aunt touched me wrongly in this place, you give us, you contact your law enforcement or DCF, then they contact us, and then we will come in, and then we will actually have you to tell your child, like, hey, I'm going to take you to this center, and you're going to meet some really cool people, and they're really fun, they're energetic, and they're going to show you love, and then they're going to ask you a few questions. And so we actually advise you guys, or advise the parents to, or the guardians to really kind of explain to the child what we're doing so that they won't be terrified to come in. Basically what they'll do is they'll go into a room. We've got cameras and microphones set up. The room over next to it will have law enforcement, typically a law enforcement agent, a DCF, our advocate, and then another advocate will be there. And so we specialize in this. We have trainings on this. So the process we use is very child friendly. We ask neutral questions. Our goal isn't to try to prove, so and so did this. Our goal is to say, okay, you're disclosing this to us. How can we help you? Or
In the case of if it's a parent, how do you go about that? So, because they'll try to coach them to tell you this or that, won't they?
and they will, but honestly, the statistic shows that, and I can't remember, the number was like 0.002% that child will be not telling the truth because of coaching or something. So it's almost unheard of, even though you have that 1 out of a million. Just put that on the record, but it's the statistics so low that you almost can't even count it, because reality is something happened. It's hard. You'd be hard pressed for a 6-year-old to explain in detail what had happened to them in their language. I had to watch an interview a while back, and it was so graphic, and that it would probably haunt you at night. But 6-year-old wouldn't know these things. 6-year-old wouldn't know these things that they're disclosing to us unless they seen a movie on it or something. Even if the parent told them, it would contradict themselves or whatever. But again, our goal isn't try to prove anything. Our goal is just to say, because here's the thing is, if a 6-year-old boy or girl is telling this horrific story, they need help anyways. Whether it really happened, and again, statistics shows that most likely it did happen, or if they made it all up, or if the parent coached them to do that or whatever, they need help, and so we're there for them. And we provide therapy for anyone that comes through our doors that use our services. We don't have a cutoff to our therapy, and so again, some agencies, they're court appointed. Once the court's done, they're done. We're not, and so we see kids, or even as an adult, they may get pregnant. They utilize our services when they was 9 because they were raped. Now they're 22, they get pregnant. It triggers, flashback, triggers something and they start having some traumatic, memories or whatever. They can come right back to our doors. And
So you can help adults too.
yes, if they have used our services, then. And then also, one of the things, we had 519 cases last year. And so that's equivalent to about two cases per working day for us. And so with that, the ratio there, I think you guys actually had 5 of those cases. So you guys are one of the fortunate counties, meaning low, meaning 5 is way too much though. I believe you all have 5 cases in 2018 of that 519 cases altogether.
Those are
Can
sad
you let them know
numbers.
the counties that you cover?
Yeah, so on this paper right here, we are in 34 counties now. And so our latest county would be Joyle County. They contacted us and asked if we would bring our mobile units there for a case, and we said absolutely. And so now we're partnering together with them, and so now they're contacting us to, anytime they have a disclosure or a
Well, it's a
hint.
great resource because you're really the only place we can turn.
Oh, for you guys, yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, we really don't have
Not
any
really
other
close to
choice.
anything else, or, yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, as long as they're in need, we're gonna be there, and it takes about, to utilize our services with our forensic interviewing, with everything we purchase, not including though the ongoing therapy, it takes about $1,700 to $2,000 per case. And that's with everything, except for the ongoing therapy. We don't bill the families anything. So if they utilize our services, they don't get a bill, your county attorney don't get a bill, the law enforcement don't get a bill, we don't send the bills out, and so that's where your all's money comes in. You know, and we're pretty open with where our funds go. We have, our budget, 70% of it comes from grants. We you know, it's that, you know, I always say, it's that scandalous topic no one wants to talk about. And so when you have other agencies out there that people are pouring money into, that's not us yet. And so one day we would like to be able to have a partnership with every one of our communities we're in, 34 of them, to where we can say, we've got an agreement, this is what the pledge is, this is what our agreement is, this is how we're gonna work together in our MDT meetings and all of this, like have a good relationship with all our communities where we say, if we lose a grant, we'll still be self-sustainable in 10 years. We don't have that. I mean, you know, again, 70% of our income for our budget will be from a couple federal grants. And so, but again, that 30% is crucial, and that's where our counties come in. And so, kids don't get billed or anything, and that's from you guys, so.
Okay, well, we have budget time coming up pretty soon, so.
Any questions?
No, you answered what I needed to know.
I'm good, thank you.
What is the budget?
Excuse me?
What do we budget?
I don't know where they're at now.
Do you have your budget?
Deep.
Jonathan, can I get this revised? Because I see that the sheriff needs to sign it. and-
Absolutely, we always, yeah, anyone who we work with, we try to get signatures, but if you would like to, and you'll get a copy of everything, and nothing's changed from the years past, what they told me, I haven't been here that 3 years, I haven't been here 3 years, so, but nothing's changed. But yeah, feel free to keep that.
Okay.
Do you see the sheriff a lot? Could you get that signature for me, or?
I sure can.
Perfect, thank you. If you do me a favor and get your signature and his signature,
And I can also get
I
Chief's.
think Cody.
thank you
come
so
in.
much. And then you can just mail that back to the office, please.
Perfect.
Thank you so
Coming in
much.
today, no?
I think Cody come in last year. I think Cody was here. It wasn't you last year that come here, was it?
No, Vicky Huben. So if you guys remember Vicky
I think
Huben.
Cody come in and talked about how important it was.
Oh, wow, okay.
Are you on the board?
What's that?
Are you on the board?
No, Kelly asked me years ago to be on the board, but because of my dual functions.
4,000.
Okay. Well, last year, we budgeted 4,000. And I don't know if you guys have goals or expectations from counties or just whatever
No,
you can
we
get.
usually ask 5,000, but we understand, you know, we honestly, we get anywhere between 500 to 30,000. 30,000 is pretty much our top that we get from counties. 500 is probably the lowest, you know, so pretty much almost, I think we have one county that has never gave anything yet, and we're working on, and unfortunately, that's the county that had probably the highest cases,
Isn't that- yeah.
over 100. And so, but this year hopefully will change. I had a meeting with them, and hopefully they're in the process of possibly, they're talking about it.
Well, just to give you an idea, in 2017, we set aside $3,000 and added 1,000 last year. And
And we
So right
do,
now
I
it's
forgot to mention this, sorry to interrupt you,
No, that's
my
fine.
mind just, wheels are turning. Along with the medical unit, something new too that's new is we just put on our team 2 youth mentors, 2 young fine men that is actually going to be hopefully traveling to all of our communities, working and partnering with the school systems to start what is called a Y-Try program. And it's kind of like a big brother, big sister, but it's not that. It's called Y-Try, and it's really to help. It's just to mentor these children so they can flourish, especially these ones that has trauma from abuse, to show them that they don't have to define them. And so they're going to be in their lives, working with them, always be a contact for them. And it's kind of, our advocates already do that anyways. I mean, like this year prom, they were sending pictures to our advocates. I mean, it's really a loving relationship. It's not about, let me come here, you ask me questions, or let me come here and you give me a stuffed bear and some toothpaste or whatever, and then be on my way. No, these are relationships, that these advocates have with these children. If they do go to court, less than 10% of the cases go to court, which is a good thing. But if they do go to court, our advocates are there, walk up to the stand with them. They'll talk to the kids. It's very traumatic for the kids to go to court, and they try to shield the kids from the perp if possible. And so it's relationships. But we thank you guys. I know I took too much of your time, I'm sure, but thank you guys so much for your great support in the past. And again, ask that you would continue that support into 2020. And thank you all so much for everything. And thank you, attorney. And
Well, and I've had experience with the new medical unit, and that is amazing because they have both the forensics and the medical on site. They're able to get it all done within a short period of time. And you have all of the information that you need, because we are bound on certain cases where we only have 72 hours to get something going. And we have all of that information right there. And it's amazing.
And that's a new thing, so I'm so glad. We're all excited. Everyone on our team's excited that we've got that going, so that's real exciting.
Okay, well, thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you guys so much.
Appreciate it.
And clerk, this will be for you, and if you guys do decide to give, and I hope you do, of course, you just mail that back, and then this one right here needs to be on your letterhead.
Okay.
And you just mail it back to us as well.
Okay.
Thank you all so much.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks,
sir.
sir.
Hopefully you guys' day gets better, and
Rudy.
thank you for that.
Yes, I will get that done. When do you need it by, Jonathan?
Within 2 weeks, I believe, actually. It's really, those help us for grants as well.
Okay.
Showing that we're partnering, and so, as soon as possible.
All right,
Thank
will
you.
do. Thanks.
Okay, Reed.
Good morning, all.
Good morning. That's a lot of
Are you
paper.
coming up too?
I've got a book, but the good thing
You
is,
coming up too, or you gonna?
it's the detail information, we're only gonna cover the summary, so. So I'd asked Scott to be last on the agenda, because I knew I had quite a few things to discuss, so thanks, Scott. And for the text to get me up here, we're running a little early.
On this first one, they all passed, I thought 3 had not passed.
So they had passed the class. So the first thing is the EMT class.
Oh, okay.
And
Sorry
they,
to get ahead of myself here.
no, that's the first thing on the topic. Let's get going. They had passed the class. So after they have passed the class, then they can set for their written national test and then their skills test. So they had all passed the class. 9 passed the written test so far out of 13. So 4 didn't pass that. They'll have to retest. And then our state test for skills is June 15th over in Burke. So I'm pleased with that. Just an update, kind of bad luck, but Steve Everett, the last couple of weeks of class, fell down, broke his leg, shipped him out, required surgery, so Wendy and I stepped in and we got the class finished for him, so he got to run some of it from a hospital bed.
The guy that was given the test?
The guy that was teaching the class.
Teaching the class?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
So that's the update on the EMT class. You know, how it probably is going to work out, we'll know by July 1st, this first round, who passed. And we're going to put them on a probationary period for 3 months. And then kind of vote as staff to see who we're going to allow off of probation and who we're not going to allow off of probation. And all that's going to mean is that we still don't have confidence that they can be by themselves, is all that is. So when the team feels like, hey, you know what, they've proven themselves in the field, at a meeting, we'll just vote them on, then they can be on the schedule. Basically, two of them without one of us old timers with them. So that's kind of how we're planning on doing that. And hopefully the other four are gonna retest, and they can retest another 2 times. Then they have to go back for like, maybe a weekend class, and they can test another 2 times, I think, but. So that's kind of how that works. So that's the EMT class. Grant update. There's been several different grant things happen since I was here last in March. The CRAFT grant, which is State of Kansas grant, annually that we do budget for the county match. We were denied this year, like we were denied last year for a monitor. Was really hoping we could get that this year. Hoping for next year. They really don't tell us anything why. It's just if you were denied or approved. The Century 2 grant that we applied for, the Rescue Task Force Ballistic Protection in Bird City, for the Bird City station was also denied. That same grant I wrote for the St. Francis New Generation Fund and the Cheyenne County Impact Fund, and you can see those were both awarded. So that means we're gonna scale this project down a little bit and not have 2 teams, one in each community. We'll just have the one in St. Francis to start with. Of course, it will cover the whole county. And then the rest of the funding, we're gonna apply for a step-through grant with Hanson. So, any questions on these grants? Pretty straightforward. I told you last time I was working on that whole personal vehicle liability insurance and county vehicle liability. I've got all the responses back. I need to go through it and tabulate it and present it to you guys. So that's kind of been on hold for this whole EMS inspection thing, and that is the basis of why I'm here mostly today, is just to talk about where we're at, what we're gonna do, and that type of thing. And that's where most of this came from, because I wanted you to have all the information that I have. So, staffing, scheduling, investigation. The Board of EMS is wrapping up their investigation regarding the violation of KSA 656135. So, if you go to this page, that is our annual service inspection. That's just page 1. I printed off for you. What they're talking about is that thing that's in red. It's like page 3, it should be. Closer this way, I think.
That must be my trouble. There we
Oh,
go.
good. I was like, don't tell me I didn't put them in
No, I know, it's
anybody's.
just me.
So that's page 1 of multiple pages of their inspection. And so it says, each operator shall maintain a current duty roster that demonstrates compliance with this statute that I'm referencing and amendments thereto. The duty roster shall reflect appropriate staffing for the service and ambulance type as specified in those 2 regulations. So that statute, those 2 regulations, then I printed off for you behind that if you want to reference it. It's also in those big binders that I gave you guys. That basically says, you know, we've got to have 2 technicians on the schedule at all time to prove to them that we can provide ambulance service. So that's what they're saying that we are non-compliant with, and that's where all this comes from. So the next steps will be the investigator is still working on stuff. He'll send a report to the investigations committee. They'll meet at the next Board of EMS board meeting. They'll review it. They'll assign sanctions and corrective actions and all that kind of stuff, and we'll basically get a letter back. Now, on this case, my assumption is, since they are spending so much time with investigations, that I would assume they're gonna probably come out here for a site visit also, to talk to everybody. I don't know that for sure. I know that's not standard with the rest of the investigations I've been through, but I know when Atwood went through this years ago, they were out there several times, so I'm just giving you a heads up that they might be here. And I did put that those two regulations are enclosed. So the history of this is back in April of 2016, and I touched on this back in March, but we held a special commissioner meeting, none of you were commissioners at that time, regarding EMS restructuring options because we had staffing concerns at that point. And we looked at the trend over time. Our trend doesn't look positive for staffing. We assumed we were gonna have a problem. So really, nothing happened with that special meeting. There was no further discussions and no action taken, and that kind of leads us to where we are today. The board called us out on it, and now we're gonna have to make some type of changes. So, our current situation. I went through and analyzed from January 1st to May 24th, our schedule. And to summarize it, and after all this regulation stuff, there's gonna be an Excel sheet like this. That's what I got off of the schedule. So to summarize this information is we had 536 hours that would technically be in violation of this statute. 536 hours where on the schedule, there was not 2 technicians on there.
On the schedule.
On the schedule. Now, I struggle with saying that because that sounds to me really bad. It sounds to me like the ambulance service wasn't available for 536 hours so far this year. And this is part of my concern. I know it's a statute and it's a regulation, we've got to follow it. But why I can sleep at night and know that we have these holes is we have a lot of people, most of our people, that are listening to calls that have radios that just can't commit to the on-call schedule, period. Most of our staff's that way. And to prove that point, I thought this was interesting. During those 536 hours of less than compliant staffing, we had 21 calls of service during those specific 536 hours. And of course, we had full crews and no delays and all that kind of stuff. The state's not gonna care about that. But for you guys being the owners and me being the director, I guess if there's a perception in the community that we weren't available because of what we're going through, that's not true. We just have people that this isn't their primary job, that have secondary, this is secondary or tertiary to what they're doing, and they can't be on the call schedule. So,
Now, let me ask you a question.
yeah,
Do you have to submit the schedule to the state?
so how all this came about was when they come out and do their inspection every year, there's that one that they check mark. And they're like, hey, can I look at your schedule? Yep, I show them the current schedule. So if it's January and they come out, they see the January schedule, they take a peek and they usually cross it off. This year, because of a self-report that we made with a Bird City call, where we had moved an ambulance without 2 technicians, that whole block.
So that's where all this is.
That's
stemming
where
from.
all this is from.
Okay.
Have we had this same exact problem? You know, yes. I mean, is it worse this year? Like I said, 3 years ago, we knew the trend. We knew the trend wasn't moving in the right direction. But like I said, I was sleeping because I had a lot of people that I knew were listening. You know?
So you actually had people, but not
We can't
committed
prove
to
it
a
on the schedule. We
Right.
can't prove it on the schedule. And, you know, the schedule to me is a Bible. And I'm not gonna, it's gonna be accurate and it's gonna be whatever.
Right.
You know, because we have if you're on call, you have a statutory obligation to respond. So that can be called in with some cases. If you don't show up and you're on call, they can take your license away. So that thing's really important to us. And so I want to make it as honest and true and accurate as we can.
I understand what you're saying because like me as a driver, I'm never on the schedule and,
Right.
you know, but it's hard to be on the schedule because if I have to go to St. Francis to pick something up, you can't leave, you gotta be in there with a certain amount of time, and I figure as a volunteer, if I can make it, I'll make it, and if I
Right.
can't.
So basically, the restrictions, we have to live by those restrictions, even though we're a small county with a small staff.
You know your answer.
Yeah, I'm getting, yeah,
And that's, I mean, probably honestly why this hasn't been a big, big issue historically. I feel comfortable with our staffing level, but it's really not up to me.
yeah.
And it's really not
Well, it
what
doesn't.
I think or what you
It doesn't
think.
become a big concern unless we are not answering calls.
Right.
And.
Or we're having big delays or something like that. I mean,
Well, Reed, can I ask this?
Yeah.
How many certified EMTs do we have in Cheyenne County?
don't quote me, but I'm gonna say 18.
The problem is, we're only utilizing how many on a regular basis?
6.
I was gonna say 4 or 5
Yeah,
that can really be on the call
Well,
schedule.
and the reason I'm asking that is because every year we have these big classes that are going through and taking advantage of the EMT courses and going through the certification process, but I don't see the numbers.
You don't see it taking care of any problem?
Yeah,
We've got 13.
right.
And, you were at that meeting where we invited students too. They weren't or passed the class yet, but it was back in March, and we asked them. So, pretend like you passed, pretend you know that you're EMTs now. How much can you really be on the call schedule? And it's just, it's just like I've said, they've got other jobs, and it was like, well, I can be on there quite a bit during the days, except when I have an important meeting or have something scheduled here or something scheduled there, and that's great, and we have to have those people. Or we're gonna be forced to go a full-time service, and we don't want that. That is too expensive. So we need those type of people, but that doesn't do anything for our state requirement. You know what I'm saying? So yes, ideally, if that pool would keep growing, you'll reach a point where, if you would have 50, let's say, that there is a possibility that every second could be covered. Does that make sense? But we won't get there.
I think the thing we have to look at too is they're volunteers, and
And that's debatable too. I mean, yeah, their per hour on call is real low at 50 cents an hour. But we compensate them pretty good when they go on a call. We compensate them pretty good when they go on a transfer. So I hate using the word volunteer, and you'll hear me say it from time to time, but I really think they're part-time employees.
that's the way I view them.
I mean, when you look at it from an on-call perspective and you're like, okay, you're gonna stay within 5 minutes of the building for $6 a day, that puts it into perspective a little bit. But when you go on a Denver transfer and you're making $20 to $25 an hour, that's pretty good wage. So the volunteer thing, there's kind of two sides of that. And how we classify them or whatever is kind of a technicality, but there is that spirit of volunteerism, and you're right. I mean, to be on call for 50 cents an hour, there's a lot more commitment than the 50 cents an hour is worth. And so that kind of is where that's where this thing's at. I better not get ahead of myself. Okay, we had the 21 calls for service during that time, and I did go back to our call schedule policy that was approved back in 2014, and this also would violate that because it does say we will maintain a call schedule with 2 techs on call 24/7. So we do have an issue. So we're all aware of the situation. Now let's go to remediation. What have I been doing? What have we been doing? Whatever. So we're 100% complying with the Board of EMS investigation. They have full access to our schedule, which is all electronic and online, and that's what they're going through, and they're comparing. One of the things they have found, which I know they don't like, is what I call retroactive scheduling changes. So an example of this would be, well, I'll take Wendy for instance. yesterday, she texted, called, whatever, got a hold of me and said, hey, I need to run to Goodland, pick up a prescription. Can you take me off call? There's 3 people on call. Well, we only need 2 people on call. I said, yeah, no problem. And she went to Goodland, she came back and she said she was back, and I said, okay. That change in the scheduling system didn't happen until this morning. I keep notes, and whenever I have time, I put them in the system. And the state, I know, probably is gonna say something along the line, they don't like those because they can be viewed as doctoring your schedule. And I wanna get it out saying that, like I said before, our schedule's 100% accurate. And it might happen, it might not happen in real time, and I can't imagine the service that actually does that in real time. But it looks like a retroactive scheduling change. That I took Wendy off the call schedule for yesterday, today, and that's exactly what I did. I mean, there's some changes that we make at payroll. You know, I go through my notes and I might have forgot to put in something. And I double check everything at payroll time so people get paid right. And we can go back and we can make changes. And so I just wanted to put that out because I have a feeling that's going to get mentioned at some point. I don't know, just because they don't like it, I don't see that it violates anything. So, moving on. So we're complying with that. I surveyed the staff back in March, and a lot of this is just the results of that survey. And why I printed them all off is there's good comments here. I left a section for them to make comments, and there's some pretty good comments, and when you guys have nothing better to do, if you want to just kind of see where staff are in regards to the service, I think it's kind of a good barometer of where we're at. But the summary is this. Staff support the creation of an active and an inactive list of people, because we all notice, or we all recognize that we've got 18 people certified, but only a few are active. So we're going to work harder and develop a active versus inactive, or sometimes they call them reserve, pool, so we can differentiate folks and maybe make the requirements a little less for the reserves, so we can still keep them involved. You know, when big things happen, they can come out of the woodwork, but they don't have to meet all the strict requirements of being active. I think that might help us. Staff liked that. There's support for biannual competency checkoffs. That just says that, you know, right now you get tested on your skills when you become an EMT, and we never test you again. Well, this is a process for which, in healthcare settings, usually you have this. We're going to test you to some capability and check you off that you're competent in those areas. There is quite a bit of support for staffing both stations to the minimum requirement. I'm not going to get into that discussion a whole lot today, other than first we have to staff the county. And that can be just a discussion for the other day, and for another day. And what that means is basically, you know, are they okay with putting one technician in St. Francis and one technician in Bird City, or are they not? And that didn't surprise me. I couldn't imagine too many people would say, yeah, that's the best way to go. It is the most fiscally responsible way to go, but it can provide delays in patient care. So I assume in the future we'll talk about that, but like I said, we first got to get the county covered. There was support for keeping pay rates the same. That was one of the questions I proposed. You know, if we pay people more, will you be more active and all that kind of stuff? And there really wasn't support for any pay changes. They were like, the pay is not the issue. And there is no support for shift bids. So that is good news, and I've tried to cut those back as much as I have. Those have created holes in our schedule, though, by not doing shift bids. So it's kind of a catch-22, but so that's kind of what we've done. I've analyzed the situation. We went back to staff, tried to get their input on things, and spent a lot of hours just thinking and picking people's brains, Ryan's brains, Wendy's brains, other service directors that are around, you know. And my recommendations are this, and these are just my recommendations to you guys. Remove the janitor rig checks part-time position. That position, which basically she's unofficially resigned anyway. So she's not showing up at work, and she told another coworker that she's resigning. She doesn't have time this summer, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm just waiting for the final letter, but, so get rid of that position, change the part-time position, get rid of that position and to create a full-time position. And that part-time position is what Wendy currently has. And then add an additional full-time position. So basically, we would be taking about, if we figured it in full-time equivalents, 1.75, I'm guessing, to 3. There is some interest with the current staff, and some of these are students, because I asked them also for those full-time positions, if that's something that we could create. Hopefully, and that actually surprised me. Finding EMTs is kind of hard, even for these full-time services that are around us. And so I was glad to know that maybe we wouldn't have to go outside the county if we were to do something like this. So the new positions, the goal is for the full-time people, now we're at 3, if you guys would okay or agreed to do this, to cover normal business hours and the volunteers plus the full-time people to do nights and weekends. So one of the things that I've talked to staff about is I'm on the call schedule a lot. And that's okay. I'm not complaining about that. But what it's done is we don't have anybody that can fill in when people are sick, when life happens, and that's something that staff would really, I would take more call. I would be on the call schedule more if it was like it used to be 10 years ago, where we could find people to cover us when we had to go to Goodland, or when the kids are sick, or when I'm sick. I mean, right now, I hate to say it, but we're putting people on call or keeping them on call that are sick. We're just like, wear a mask and this kind of stuff, but you still got to answer the call because there's sicker people out there that we take care of.
But the hope is that this new class, we're gonna take us some slack.
And they will, but like I said, not enough that's going to appease the state any. And that's my big goal, is that I can be that person, not on call so much, so I'm available a lot, and they can call me and, yeah, go do your thing, or, okay, you're sick, so I'll be officially on call today, and I can go on the schedule, but, so that's kind of the goals, what we're trying to do. My recommendation would be $16 an hour, 40 hours a week. Pencil in $2,500 per position for overtime. And besides their 40 hours a week, a mandatory on-call time, because our shifts are really 12 hours. And we usually have gaps during the 6 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock in the morning, and then the 5 o'clock in the evening to 6 o'clock in the evening. So those positions would have to cover that time also. And I don't know if this is all kosher with labor statistics, so you can all tell me that, but at the 50 cents an hour regular on-call rate. Does that make sense? So basically, but it's mandatory. So if they can't cover it, it is their responsibility to find somebody that covers it. That's why I call it mandatory call versus what we're doing, with everybody else. It's not mandatory now. They call me and it's my problem to deal with. Well, it's probably still going to be my problem to deal with, but at least they'll have some ownership in it.
Reed, I'm trying to figure out your plan here. So you would have you, and then you'd have 3 additional full-time? 2 additional full-time.
3 total, yeah.
3 total. What are they doing for this full-time position? What are their duties? What are their responsibilities?
So part of it is going to be that janitor rig check position. And I've got a whole list of tasks for these positions that I didn't bring. But there's a lot of different programs we do, like the HIPAA program and our drug and alcohol program, that we're meeting compliance, but barely. That I'd really like to ramp some of those up a little bit. They would be involved with helping with that. We've got a backlog of scanning. I mean, and that's basically, Wendy, how much of your time do you think you spend scanning when you're in the office? And she's just part-time now. But the scanning load alone, I bet,
I probably spend about 13, 14 hours now scanning.
and that's just to keep things moving forward. We still have the historical backlog
Yeah,
that,
but I guess what I'm trying to
Same
figure out is, you know,
for
like, if you're asking for full-time employees, what are their daily tasks to justify a full-time employment?
on the on-call schedule.
But you're asking that they cover those times that are not normally covered, but yet get a 50% or 50 cent an hour on-call pay?
Let's go back. Okay,
Okay.
so let's, from 6 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock in the morning, they're just mandatory on-call from home. 50 cents an hour.
Okay.
Then they come to work at, let's say, at 8 o'clock. That starts their $16 an hour wage, their full-time job,
Okay.
until 5 o'clock at night. And then they go home at 5 o'clock, but they have to be on call from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock at the 50 cents an hour rate.
Okay. But
Does
I'm
that
still
help
trying
what
to-
you're saying?
Well, kind of, but I'm still trying to figure out.
Like during their $16 an hour,
Yeah,
what they're
I mean,
doing?
like, why is it gonna take 3 full-time employees up there to handle the EMS? That's my question.
What are you gonna do?
So here,
Yeah, I mean, you've touched on programs, but I mean,
I
for the
think-
day-to-day,
I think, and I don't know this, but I think we can keep 3 busy. And that's why I started with 3. I don't think I can keep more than 3 busy, and then you end up like services that are around us where there's a lot of sitting around.
So the full-time positions would be a daytime thing only,
Yeah.
other than if
That's
they
that's
wanna
where our
respond at night.
holes are mostly. Is just that 8 to 5 Monday through Friday.
So you're basically just trying to appease the scheduling problem,
Oh, that's number one.
right?
And I'm gonna say this, I didn't write it down. This is a start. This is bare minimum what I think it's gonna take. I don't know.
but is this the beginning of moving to
Full-time.
full-time as
It's
opposed
a
to
step.
volunteer?
It's a step.
Your budget this year's $314,300. How much is this gonna raise your budget?
For like next year? Depends on what benefits are. What do you think I should throw at benefits?
Teresa gave you that, didn't
Oh, I don't know. Did she?
I think so.
Do you know what it was?
I don't know.
I believe these are gonna be what, 37,000 a year if you figure in the overtime. And the overtime, why I put that number in, it's a pure guess of, we have a hole in the schedule, or we have 2 holes in the schedule, I can only fill 1. You know, let's say it's a Saturday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, part of this is that they're on call every other weekend, so we're not gonna have full-time coverage during the weekends. We could have a hole. And that's when we could at least pay an overtime rate to get that covered. That's the only reason, and $2,500, I believe, was what, 80 hours a position? I mean, I just made it up, I don't know. I'm not gonna know until we do this a year, kinda where we're at, and that's why I'm calling it a minimum. I don't know. I think, as much as I've looked at it, that this is gonna get us You know, I hope 100%, but if it gets us to 95%, I'll be pretty happy. And then 5% could be covered with overtime, and we appease the state.
How soon were you talking about putting this into?
And that's really up to you guys. You know how the process works, I explained it. I know that when the investigations committee meets, and I'll have to look to see, he's got to complete this and then we'll know when it's actually going to be discussed. But they do ask, what has the local action been? You know, so what have the locals tried to do about it? I can't help but think it's a positive thing if we can go in there and say, here's our plan. This is what we're doing. So that's the time frame. I know, looking at the schedule, you know, we're starting summer, it's only gonna get worse.
But aren't we getting
Summer.
a little bit ahead of ourselves here? I'd like to see this new class get certified and then just see what we're gonna get out of them. How willing they are, how many there are. Before we start making decisions like this, I would like to see if we're gonna have people doing the job.
Right, because we up the hours in regards to what they have to be on call for if they go through the class and the county's paying for
Right,
it.
but that's not gonna make any difference in the call schedule.
Why?
20 hours won't make a
I mean, I
difference.
I
guess,
thought we moved it up to 30.
Well, it was 20, I think we moved up to 40, I think we doubled it.
I know we moved it up, I just don't have it right in front of me. So how
It's
does
not
that,
gonna-
if
it's
they're
not gonna make a
obligated
difference.
to be,
you had 2 full-time employees, if they're married, I mean, it depends, family,
Yeah, figure the
Whatever.
high road.
it's gonna be $106,000 extra from what you're paying now for 2
Okay.
full-time employees.
More? Is that subtracting out the part-time?
No, not the part-time. But you're,
Which would be probably close to 18,000, and whatever the janitor position is. And I don't, yearly, I don't know what that
because
is.
it's a little over $53,000 a year for one part-time person.
So we're probably looking at 80. Change to my budget would be about 80,000. That's why it gets expensive when you go full-time, or when you start going there. Now, this also gives you quite a bit of coverage in Bird City, quite a bit of coverage in St. Francis. It's not like a full-time station just in one place. And to run one full-time station takes 7.3 full-time people. So I'm hoping to provide a higher level of service with 3. But and let me address let's wait for the class and see, right, that would be ideal. See where we're at in 6 months.